now live stream on YouTube.
Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Cabinet of Rushcliffe Borough Council, and welcome to anybody who is watching live stream on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. Also, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements Regulations of 2012, other people may film, record, post or on social media or blog from this meeting. Any such images or use or sound recordings is not within the control of the council. So with that, thank you. I'll move to the main agenda. And item 1, apologies for absence. As far as I'm aware, we're all here, so no apologies. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to declare an interest in item 10, please, and I won't comment or vote on that matter.
Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of April. Can I have your approval to sign those minutes? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 4, that brings us to the citizens' questions, and we have 2 citizens' questions, but neither of the citizens have been able to attend this evening. Therefore, I will read out their questions on their behalf and ask the relevant cabinet member to respond. So the first question is from Claire Wen, and the question is, why is it that owners of new build properties in Rushcliffe are in effect paying council tax twice? Once to the council and once to a management company to maintain green spaces accessible to and used by the whole community, not just those who pay the additional fee. If I could ask Councillor Verdi, could you respond to that, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Claire, for the question. So the spend that we're referring to is in relation to assets not maintained by or indeed the responsibility of the council, and therefore residents are not paying twice. Those individuals paying fees do so based on the contracts they have entered into with developers, and it would not be right for taxpayers across the borough to be paying for a service that is not the responsibility of the council. The payment of these fees is not in any way a replication of council tax payments to the council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Verdi. And I move to the second citizen's question, which is from Jonathan Morris. And his question is, why is the financial risk to Rushcliffe Borough Council of setting up an estate management company deemed so high that it prevents doing so, despite the activity being financially attractive and viable for many private businesses and investors, given 100% of the costs incurred can be charged to the affected residents? And I'll turn to Councillor Verdi again, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Morris, for the question. So to fulfil the duty costs would be significant in this proposal. And as outlined in the report to be discussed by Cabinet this evening, it would come with much risk in setting up a company, including the overheads consumed in managing a company and obviously the resources required to operate the service. The council does not have that sort of experience in-house. There are further risks associated with the process of recovery of income and obviously the costs in that overall sort of activity. In simple terms, it is prudent for the council not to take the risks if the private sector can fulfil this function. There are no doubt issues which are very legitimate, and these will be addressed by Cabinet in some of the agenda items this evening. The emphasis of the recommendations are to improve enforcement of the private sector, which is where the expertise currently rests, and thus they make a profit. It's also worth noting that the council has limited powers to compulsorily adopt open spaces, and therefore would make such proposals more difficult to implement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that. So that completes the citizens' questions. So we'll now move on to item 5 of the opposition group leaders' questions. And the first question we have on my list is from Councillor Birch, who also is unable to attend this evening. Therefore, falls to me again to be asking all these questions. So I will ask the question, can you please confirm when Rushcliffe Borough Council moved away from adopting public spaces and instead began allowing management companies to assume these responsibilities, with the costs being passed on to the residents? And I'll turn to Councillor Upton, please, to respond.
Chairman, the Borough Council stopped adopting open spaces on new housing estates in 2011.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Birch has sent in a supplementary, which I will now ask you. So, considering that the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group had recommended further investigation into the practices of management companies and alternative, why does the Cabinet recommend maintaining the status quo, causing a significant number of residents to be double taxed excuse me, under a policy introduced under this Conservative-led administration? Councillor Upton.
Thank you. Well, the issue of double taxation has just recently been answered by my colleague, Councillor Verdi. The recommendations will be discussed when we get to the item on the agenda later on, which I will present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll now move on to Councillor Jen Walker, if you'd like to come forward, please. And I think you're familiar with the with the ropes, so over to you.
Good evening. Thank you. In light of the casework experienced by councillors who represent the areas most affected by management companies due to their clear negative impact they're having on residents, does it not seem appropriate to keep up the scrutiny of the management companies and also keep it as a key decision for this council?
Thank you for that. Well, the first part, yes, I do agree that it's certainly appropriate to keep up the scrutiny of management companies. In fact, as Councillor Upton's already said, we will be discussing that in more detail a little bit later on. So the first part I agree with, but in terms of keeping it or making it a key decision, then that's not a political decision. In the monitoring officer's professional view, this item doesn't meet the criteria that's set out in the consultation to be a key decision. So the resource has already been dedicated to this subject, acknowledging its importance, and given the recommendations in the report, the council will continue to champion on behalf of residents theirs and our concerns over the actions of such management companies. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. As the leader and cabinet, you can determine and make a decision, a key decision. It doesn't necessarily have to go straight to the monitoring officer. So I'm going to ask again, in terms of, I feel this is a long-term and permanent nature issue with our residents. And I do think it does need to be kind of made a key decision and can it be brought to full council?
Well, I'm afraid I need to slightly repeat what I've already said, because as I say, it's not a political decision as to whether something is a key decision or a non-key decision. However, what I would say is, and I've said this to your colleagues and several people many times, this is an issue that we're all concerned about. So this is not a political party matter at all, as far as I'm concerned, because I think we need to be all working together and getting the issue addressed and then resolved. And whether it's a key decision or not, to be honest, if we're all working together, I don't think that matters whether it's a key decision or not, because as far as I'm concerned, my priority is to actually achieve something for the residents and get the regulation of these management companies underway. Thank you. Right, I now invite Councillor Carys Thomas, please, to come forward. Again, I think you're familiar with the routine. Over to you.
Thank you. In agenda item 8, there is a proposal for the council to acquire 50 hectares of land and maintain it for carbon sequestration at an estimated maintenance cost over 15 years, including initial planting and replacement, but not land purchase, of around £1 million. In agenda item 7, the estimated cost for maintaining about twice as much open space in Fareham, 110 hectares over 15 years, is £11 million. Land on new estates could be acquired as a planning gain, with the developer probably covering the costs of initial planting. Why is one estimate so much more expensive than the other?
Thank you for that. And I'll turn to Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Basically, we're not comparing like with like, in my opinion. You could say apples with pears, but seriously, the agenda item 7, reference to Fareham development, includes for more infrastructure costs than agenda item 8, which is essentially for new woodland. So the figures in both reports have been calculated from national building and surveying guidance, as it is mentioned in my report when I present it later. So fundamentally, we're not comparing like with like.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do have several. I just
Well, just the one. Thank you.
just selecting here. So I think you've explained that it's you're not comparing like with a like. Are you aware that in a recent planning application recently approved in Gotham, the largest area of green space is for biodiversity gain with no public access, including public access for the residents of the estate, who will presumably be landed with the maintenance bill? How does the portfolio holder feel about this scenario?
Councillor Upton.
I understand what you say, although I'm not aware of the actual planning application you refer to, so I really haven't got that information to go into any detail. I hear what you say about no public access, no residents access to an area of open space. I'm not aware of it, Chairman. I'd have to look into it and do a written response.
Fine, fair enough. Lovely. Thanks for that, Councillor Thomas. That brings us to the end of the questions to Cabinet. So move on to the main agenda items and to agenda item 6, which is on page 9, which relates to revised contaminated land inspection strategy for the next 5 years. So I'll ask Councillor Inglis, could you present the report, please?
Yeah, thank you. So initially, what is contaminated land? So that's land that possesses a significant risk to people, to underground waters, surface waters, ecological systems, and property because of substances that's contained within it, such as tars, heavy metals, organic compounds, and mining materials. The two key areas of the report are to protect the local environment from harm and to protect people's health, well-being and safety, which also complements the Council's current corporate strategy aims in relation to the environment and to the quality of life for residents. So it isn't a requirement for the Council to review its contamination land inspection strategy on a regular basis. It was last formally adopted in 2018, which details how the Council will review the land within its borough for contamination. Back in December 2013, DEFRA announced that funding for the councils for site investigations under their Contaminated Land Capital Gains Scheme would be and have been withdrawn. resulting in the council having to be more reactive rather than proactive in their undertaking of contaminated land investigations due to the costs falling directly upon them. But primarily, investigations will be dealt with in the planning process, and that will be the cost to the landowner, which is deemed the most appropriate means of dealing with land contamination. So the proposed strategy and equality impact assessments are attached in Appendix A and B. So I do not propose to detail them, as the basis of the strategy remains unchanged from the last review. But it does ensure that the council meets its responsibilities under the legal requirements of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 and represents the progress that is anticipated in the context of current resources and to the expertise available to the council with a renewed action plan for the next 5 years. So I'm happy to recommend the Cabinet approves the Contaminated Land Inspection Strategy 2024 to 2029 as in paragraph 2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And could I ask Councillor Verdi, would you like to second it, please?
Thank you, Chairman. So thank you, Councillor Inglis, for detailing the key points in the report. And I think from a finance, as portfolio holder for finance perspective, it's prudent for me to draw attention to the fact that as the government funding was withdrawn, as Councillor Inglis has just noted, in 2013, it leaves the council with a potential budget shortfall from any required investigations and remediation. Should a major emergency arise, obviously financial support will be addressed by DEFRA, subject to their budget availabilities, but generally costs, as already stated, will be resolved directly with the landowner and their insurance companies through the council's planning regime. For council-owned land, it would be necessary to utilise contingency budgets or in-year efficiencies, and staff costs are contained within existing budgets. So we're unable to carry out our statutory enforcement responsibilities without a strategy being in place, and with no alternative option, this strategy needs to be in place and be implemented effectively. So I'm happy to second the recommendations in paragraph 2 of the report, Chairman, to comply with the council's legal responsibilities.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I think, to be honest, it's pretty straightforward. As Councillor Inglis indicated, it's pretty much a refresh of an existing strategy. So without further ado, the recommendation are on page 11 to approve the strategy. All those in favour, please? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 7, which is on page 29, and this relates to the management of open spaces in new developments. If I could ask Councillor Upton, please, to present the report.
Thank you, Chairman. One of my longer presentations, I'm afraid, but I feel this report warrants it, and especially for our online audience. This is quite a long and detailed report, but it attempts to respond to the concerns reported by councillors and some residents regarding the management of open spaces on new housing developments by private management companies, and in particular the cost of the annual service charges, although other issues such as the quality of the work, poor customer service, and no effective complaint mechanism are also mentioned. This is not an issue that is confined to Rushcliffe, but it is a national issue for which there is currently no regulation for the governance of these private estate management companies. The report summarises the key issues as the council understands them and considers what role the council can have to improve the situation for residents. This issue was considered at the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group in January this year, and it is proposed that the group reviews progress on the proposals in the spring of next year. The design and layout of many new housing estates has changed over recent years. Historically, the layouts had little or no unadopted streets or public open spaces, and most properties had larger gardens with perhaps a small council-run play park for the very large developments. In recent years, however, many estate designs have changed to accommodate environmental and topographical issues, such as the need to deal with surface water on site with watercourses, ponds, and sustainable urban drainage systems, and the need to provide more biodiversity through woodland, hedges, and wildlife corridors. As housing densities have generally increased, private gardens have generally got smaller, and communal public open spaces managed by private management companies have been provided by developers to try and compensate for this. Historically, this council adopted new open spaces when they essentially comprised a relatively small number of grassed areas and some footpaths. But due to the increased complexity of the spaces and the significantly increased cost, the council stopped this in 2011. Officers have carried out some detailed research into the costs of reverting back to the former model of managing these open spaces on new developments, and information on this is contained within paragraphs 4.23 to 4.30 of the report. The conclusion is that the council is not currently able to adopt open spaces on new developments due to the significant financial burden this would create. It is just not financially viable. However, on a more positive note, the council has and is taking a more active and supportive role by working with developers and management companies to encourage good practice, and this is outlined in section 4.36 of the report. A supplementary planning document and a good practice code on the management of open spaces are being developed, and the council may be an advocate for residents groups that have concerns or disputes. Officers have met with both management companies and developers this year to discuss concerns raised by residents, and all have said that they are keen to build better relationships with the council and with the residents. The majority of developers are registered with the Independent New Homes Quality Bill Board, the NHQB, which does include a new homes ombudsman, and this could help to improve the present situation. The council is aware of the government's intention to legislate in this area, particularly regarding freeholder rights, and it is lobbying actively for it to regulate the governance of estate management companies to ensure transparency, remove charges unrelated to the management of open spaces, and mandate engagement with homeowners. Indeed, the leader of this council wrote to the Secretary of State in March this year, urging the government to put into place these controls, and this letter is attached in Appendix B to the report. The council is also aware of the market study into house building by the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, an independent, non-ministerial department, and a significant focus of which is on the management of open spaces on housing estates. This council responded to the consultation, and in February this year, the CMA published its final report, which expresses concerns around estate management charges and made 3 recommendations, which are shown in paragraph 419 of this report. The key one perhaps being that council should adopt amenities on all new housing estates. But, and it's a big but, the CMA does not suggest how this should be funded and recognises concern about how councils will finance this, and it suggests that the government will need to consider how best to ensure that appropriate funding is provided to the councils. The leader of the council received a response to his letter to the Secretary of State, which stated that the government will be considering the CMA's findings and it will respond to them within 90 days of its February 2024 report. So hopefully we will hear something soon. So, in conclusion, we, Rushcliffe Borough Council, understand the issues around the management of open spaces in new housing developments, especially the financial cost to residents. We have and continue to lobby government for legislation concerning this issue. We await the government's response to the CMA's report, especially regarding financial support to councils. This council does not have the legal power to oblige developers to hand over the management of open space to it. Officers have carried out detailed research into the cost of reverting back to managing these open spaces, but have concluded that at present this is just not financially viable. To do so would only worsen an existing projected budget deficit position in the medium term with efficiencies already required. We are playing a much more proactive role with developers and residents to try and improve the situation. And finally, we are considering guidance for new estate design layouts as part of our new building design code, with the ambition of reducing the amount of public open space. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Upton, and thank you for that comprehensive presentation. I will second the proposal, and I absolutely endorse many of the things which you have said, particularly your understanding of the concerns of residents, which are extremely real. This is an important issue, and that's illustrated by the number of questions that we have had at the beginning of this meeting, which does show the concern all round. And the only thing I would say is this is not confined to Rushcliffe. This is a national problem. It occurs across the country, and there are concerns all around the country, and lobbying is taking place. And when I have had conversations with people nationally, I've made the distinction because sometimes people confuse or conflate the potential legislation regarding leasehold properties as opposed to potential legislation regarding freehold properties. So my lobbying hasn't referred to the leasehold. This is about the freehold properties and the contracts that are entered into by purchasers of new housing developments. And I think what's happened is historically, as Councillor Upton indicated, there were large areas of grassed areas which gradually got bigger and bigger, and gardens have got smaller and smaller. And the introduction of the management companies, it's like a lot of things in life, they've produced unintended consequences. It was never envisaged that a lot of the circumstances contained with fees and charges from the management companies would be part of the contracts. And so, as far as I'm concerned, and you've already indicated that I wrote to the Secretary of State, I'm continuing to lobby with that, also through the Local Government Association, through the LGA groups there, and also through the District Council's network. So I'm using several avenues to actually lobby on this issue, because what is important is that we do get some proper regulatory rules and legislation that relates to the management of these open spaces, because we must make sure that there is proper regulation. So, as I indicated earlier in the questions, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is something that we are all pretty much on the same page. Maybe we have slightly different views in terms of how we discuss it, but in general, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're all of the same view. So I don't view this as a party political. We need to be working together. So I think we need to discuss as we go forward in the next few weeks, and discuss with officers and discuss amongst ourselves how we can take a collective discussion forward, whether it be in the form of a working group, but more likely a round table discussion with including a a cross-party roundtable discussion so that we can identify the exact issues that can be taken forward in our request to get regulation of these management companies. So I think there is a lot of work to be done and a lot of discussion to take place. And this certainly, as far as I'm concerned, is the start of it. And this will get us underway because the scrutiny process will also continue as well. So I will certainly be seconding that. Councillor Upton, you want to come back?
Well, I probably missed the most important part, Chairman, in my enthusiasm for going through my notes. I didn't actually recommend that the recommendations in the report on page 29, recommendations A to D, that the Cabinet should adopt those. I don't intend to read them out. They're quite lengthy, but they are there on the section 2 of the report. My apologies.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think for me, I really want to emphasise the point about needing the government legislation. I think one of the most key points in the report is point 4.29, which I indulge Tim by reading out because I think it's really important for those watching on YouTube who may not have read the report. If this council did decide to adopt open space, developers currently would be under no obligation to agree to this arrangement. Developers would be in a position to consider whether to hand the open space over to the council with a commuter sum or to a management company, requiring no financial contribution from the developer. Were the developer to agree to a commuter sum, it would affect viability of the scheme, offsetting other obligations such as Section 106 and SIL contributions and affordable housing numbers being reduced. So I think it's really important to show that this isn't just about the adoption of open space. It has a huge knock-on effect potentially for new developments. And as someone who chairs the Sharp Hill Action Group and Sharp Hill board in terms of looking at the new development we got up there, I know that there are many issues around new development, not just the open spaces, and this could potentially have far-reaching consequences. So what's really important is we work with government about the legislation so everyone knows where they stand, develop at the very start, because policies can change by any council administration, and these developments are going to last a hell of a long time. So we have to be absolutely clear that we know that whatever we have in place will be long lasting, and developers know from the very start, and residents moving into a development have that security and know what's going to happen over many years, not just depending on the whims of a different council administration or a different party at the time. And as someone who represents area with this, I think it's really important. It's also worth saying that an area that myself and Councillor Verdi represent is got a development where even when we had the policy in place about adopting spaces, the developer signed not to, and continues to run that area themselves, even though at the time they could hand it over to the council. And there have been issues there. And it's very hard for us as the council, the amount of times I've asked officers to be going on and on to developers, and I've had to say it took about, I think it was a broken fence one day, wasn't it? About 20 emails, I think, came to at one point to fix a broken fence. So it does show that this isn't an issue that's just been around now. And so that's why if we had the proper legislation in place, it gives us the powers to support our residents and make sure that developers are held to account on what the exact law of the day is. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? I'll just draw your attention to it. It's mentioned in the recommendations, but paragraph 4.36, which refers to actually this work is already underway, because I know that officers are already talking to many developers about good practice, and the third bullet point where it talks about management companies being invited to join development boards. So it is, I mean, just want to emphasise how important we do view this, and it is something that does need sorting, and we do need to get the government to bring regulation forward to assist us in the management company process. Are there any other questions, comments? No, in which case, as Councillor Upton moved, whether it's page 29 or page 42, the recommendations are on both pages. So all those in favour of those recommendations, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8. and that is the Rushcliffe Carbon Offsetting Framework. Back to Councillor Upton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel I'm singing for my supper this evening, but here goes. Not such a long synopsis this time, you'll be pleased to know.
I can't promise to have any piano accompaniment for your singing, but
No. Well, in 2020, this council agreed a target to become carbon neutral by 2030. And the key words are from its direct operations. And it adopted a carbon management action plan to monitor the progress of this. I stressed that this target is concerned solely with those direct operations that are within the control of this council. And in 2021, the council adopted a climate change strategy for 2021 to 2030, and this reaffirmed the council's commitment to be carbon neutral from its own operations by 2030. We are making good progress to achieve this target with several active projects underway to decarbonise our property assets, fleet vehicles, etc. But, and here's the big but again, some carbon offsetting, currently estimated at around 360 tonnes per annum, will be required. And this report sets out a carbon offsetting framework to achieve this. Now, the focus of this carbon offsetting framework is on offsetting within the borough of Rushcliffe and includes the establishment and enhancement of a range of natural habitats to promote ecology. I stress that the framework is focused on offsetting within the borough. We could choose to go to acquire carbon credits from third-party providers, presumably all over the world, or we could acquire land outside the borough. But we do not want to do this, as we believe the right thing to do is to show local leadership and deal with this issue within our own borough. This is quite a detailed report, but fundamentally it is recommending a carbon offsetting framework that focuses on developing natural habitats on our own land, on land that we purchase, and working with partner organisations such as farmers and the like. And all these options are set out in paragraph 4.5 of the report. Officers have calculated that we will require approximately 40 hectares of additional woodland over our current woodland holdings and a further 10 hectares of meadow or wetland to offset carbon emissions from our own operations, 50 hectares in total. Section 4 of the report gives detailed information on the types of natural habitats that can give good carbon offsetting and the principles on what to plant and where to plant it. And it includes a map that shows the best areas in the borough of Rushcliffe that are considered to give the best opportunities for both carbon offsetting and biodiversity. So we need to consider acquiring some land within the borough for our carbon offsetting, and the report recommends that any acquisitions should go through the acquisitions and disposal policy, clearly setting out the opportunity, the carbon offsetting potential, its existing uses and financial cost. Section 6 of the report sets out some guidelines and the risks in purchasing land and recommends a site-specific risk assessment shall be undertaken for all proposed purchases. Section 7 of the report gives information on likely land purchase prices and the cost of planting woodland and the cost of ongoing maintenance. Paras 714 to 716 give a lot of detailed information, financial information, on how the cost of this land acquisition for the carbon offsetting could be achieved by using our climate change reserve, including possible topping up of the reserve from any future budget underspends. A nominal allocation of £100,000 per annum could be set aside from the climate change reserve to provide a starting up budget for this acquisition of land for offsetting over the next 5 years. But also there are various funding support schemes that are available for tree planting and ongoing management that can be investigated and probably applied for. We're making good progress to become carbon neutral by 2030 from our own direct operations, but we need to offset, as I say, an estimated 360 tonnes of carbon emissions per annum, and we need to start taking this action now. I therefore recommend that Cabinet approves the recommendations set out in section 2 of the report, namely, Cabinet A, approves the carbon offsetting framework for the repurpose or acquisition of land or partner with other agencies to deliver carbon offsetting in the borough of Rushcliffe, and B, delegates responsibility to the Director of Neighbourhoods in conjunction with the Council's Section 151 officer to implement the carbon offsetting framework in accordance with the Council's acquisition and disposal policy and financial regulations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to second this paper. Councillor Upton's summarised it at some length, so I won't repeat what he said, but I think I'm really pleased to see this paper because I think it begins to talk to some of the tensions that we are going to have to address with regard to a lot of our carbon neutral targets. They do not come without difficult decisions being taken, and they are not necessarily financially cheaper than some of the alternative decisions that we could take. And I think this is a pragmatic reflection of the fact that if we're going to hit our net zero across our council estates and activities, direct activities, by 2030, we are going to have to deliver carbon offset. It's the only practical way to do it. Until the technology catches up and the costs come down, every organisation that has set itself these targets is going to have to take some difficult and probably expensive decisions about how in real terms they're going to deliver this. 2030 is really only 5 minutes away on the scheme of things. So I'm really pleased to see this. I really welcome the idea that we do not offset our carbon by purchasing woodland in Scotland or trading carbon credits, but that we are going to invest, even though we recognise that's going to be more financially costly possibly than buying land outside the borough, but that it's important that we play our part in using the opportunity that this gives us to reduce our carbon footprint to also enhance our natural environment. Given the extent of development across Rushcliffe Borough over the last few years and the years going forward, I think anything that we can do that both helps deliver those carbon targets but also enhances the natural environment is absolutely critical, and this gives us an opportunity to do that, to increase our biodiversity, improve important habitats that protect the natural environment. And I'm really pleased, and I really welcome that. There was a report just this last week about how denatured the United Kingdom has become, that we have one of the poorest ecological systems in the world. In fact, I think was the conclusion. And so anything we can do that can help us to improve the condition of the ecology and the natural environment across the borough of Rushcliffe, I really welcome. So as well as the practical approach to ensure that we deliver our net zero targets by 2030, I'm delighted that this will give us an opportunity here in the borough to look at creative ways of rewilding, creating wetlands, enhancing our woodland. And finally, I'd like to say I really appreciate the urgent nature that this paper reflects, because these things take time to mature. It takes time for these things to produce the contribution to the natural environment that they are capable of doing. And so the sooner we crack on with this, the better. So I'm very happy to second the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And I would just say that obviously support the recommendations, and it's important we crack on with those, but that doesn't preclude us from looking for other options and alternatives that we can maybe try and achieve to help offsetting. So those conversations can continue, and nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. If somebody has a good idea that would help produce offsetting, then that's something that we can look at and potentially adopt in the future. But in the meantime, this starts us and gets us on our way. Any other questions or comments? No. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. So now move to item 9, and this is the empty homes strategy. And just for a change, Councillor Upton, would you like to present?
Yes, Chairman, I think the agenda needs shuffling around a bit, doesn't it, in the future? But there we are. Right, third one. Thank you. In 2019, the Cabinet approved our first empty homes strategy, and it's now due for renewal. This strategy sets out how this council can deal with empty homes within the borough. The strategy details why homes may become empty, what advice and assistance are available, and what powers the council has to try and effect change. In December last year, there were 889 empty homes, of which 498 have been empty for 6 months or more, which is the standard metric to define long-term empty. Shelter or housing, I think, is a basic human need. And to have this number of long-term empty homes in the borough at a time of major need for housing seems to me to be both morally and economically wrong. Empty homes can have a detrimental effect on the lives of neighbours and the local community for a variety of reasons, such as vandalism, fly tipping and other criminal activity. Now, the Community Scrutiny Group reviewed the current strategy in July last year and were very supportive of it. Since the start of the strategy back in 2019, the procedures and protocols have been developed and honed, and relationships have been forged with various agencies and contractors to help in the objective of getting empty homes back into use as soon as is reasonably practicable. Perhaps one of the greatest successes we've had is the development of a specific web page which gives anybody information on how to report, complain, or seek support and advice regarding empty homes. An empty homes database has also been developed to record, categorise and manage the empty homes portfolio. This empty homes strategy is working incredibly well since it started. 74 long-term and problematic empty homes that would have almost certainly remained empty indefinitely have been brought back into use by the active intervention or enforcement by this council. 74 homes. What a success story. And during the same period, over 2,400 other properties have been brought back into use without our direct intervention, but with our advice and campaigns and our support and the database that I referred to a minute ago. This is a success story and one that this council can be proud of, Chairman, and I therefore recommend that we approve the recommendations set out in section 2 to approve the revised empty home strategy 2024 to 2029, and that the Executive Director Neighbourhoods be authorised to make minor revisions to the strategy during its lifespan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Councillor Wheeler, could you like to second?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, really welcome this report. I think, you know, we talk about having to build new homes for people, but actually, first of all, we should look at the homes we have and make sure that we are occupying as many as possible, because it's not only the fact to bring a home into use for someone to use, but if you look at where a lot of the empty homes have been, they have been unkept and blighted and have an impact on the local neighbourhood and obviously the nearby residents. So I really welcome what we've done since 2019, what we continue to do. But it's also worth saying there is advice and support out there for people who perhaps inherited the home, not sure what to do, not sure how to refurbish, perhaps don't have the funds to do that. The council does have that support in place. So please do get in contact with us if you do need that support. And it's also worth saying as well to residents out there, if you do spot an empty home, please just report it to us. We can check if it is or not, and obviously look into that, because we do rely on residents well being able to raise that to our attention. So happy to second the report, Chairman, and really happy to have this report here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Yep, very important strategy that we make sure we do look to bring empty homes into use wherever possible. Any other questions or comments? In which case, has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please. Unanimous. Thank you. So move on to the final item on the agenda, item 10, which is the review of smoke control areas. Just a reminder that Councillor Brennan has declared an interest, so won't take part in this debate. Councillor Inglis.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm supporting that to tonight's audience with Councillor Upton. Thank you. We can have a rest in his voice now. Okay, the review of the smoke control area. So in 2022, the government proposed a new legally binding target to reduce levels of 10 micrograms per cubic metre by 2040, focusing on reducing the concentrations of fine particle matter, and that's the PM2.5, which is the minute sort of contaminations. As this is the air pollutant which causes the most harm to human health, and that the National Air Quality Strategy expects all local authorities to effectively use their new powers enshrined within the Environment Act of 2021 to reduce those particle emissions from sources within their control. So the Community Scrutiny Group considered a report in October 2023, which shaped a public consultation on revised smoke control areas within the borough with 4 options. So they chose the option to revoke the existing smoke control order and seek to declare the whole borough as a smoke control area as defined in the Environment Act of 2021. So a public consultation exercise was held to seek the views of our residents, as any action to reduce further emissions could have an impact on people's lives and could require financial investment or cost to individuals and businesses. The results clearly outline the public's concerns to extend the current smoke control area to envelop the whole borough, and was disproportional to any potential benefits, with 80% of the 1,206 responses in disagreement, especially towards the financial impact to residents in the rural areas, and those reasons described in and outlined in paragraph 4.6. So of the 20% of respondents who did agree with the proposal for a borough-wide smoke control area, their main reasons provided was the need to improve air quality and health outcomes or impacts on their personal health and quality of life from the present smoke odours and residuals. We've listened to those concerns, we've balanced them with the positive responses and the requirements of the Act. So it's therefore proposed that any decision is postponed for a further 2 years to any changes to the current smoke control area. This period will allow for a public awareness campaign and for people to start making provisions, plans and changes that will be required at some point in the future. So it may be at risk from criticism from DEFRA, but Rushcliffe is mainly a rural area outside the current zone, which is West Bridgford and Ed Walton, and any risk to public health is greatly diminished, as the highest risk in the areas of poor deprivation and high urban density. So I thank those residents who took the time to respond to the consultation and trust that they are assured that their concerns and opinions have all been considered in the council's decision making. So I therefore recommend, as a paragraph 2, that the report that the Cabinet agrees to existing smoke control area coverage remains unchanged for a period of 2 years, which at the time will be reviewed, and B, approves the development and delivery of a public awareness campaign around domestic burning. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I ask Councillor Wheeler, could you second, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Again, really want to welcome the number of people who completed the public consultation. I think it really shows yet again as council we do listen to the public opinion, and we've recognised that it's not the right time to change the coverage. I mean, and you know, I represent the area which council has mentioned is currently under smoke control area. It's a whole different community and operation to the more rural parts of the borough. So we do need to work with people in the more rural areas to look at what we can do to help them look at ways to change the current setup and look at ways to potentially move to more environmental methods. But we have to recognise that everyone can afford to do that straight away, and that there are different needs to those communities. So giving ourselves 2 years to work with those communities are really welcome. It also shows that when we can demonstrate to governments that they do need to bear that in mind when introducing these procedures there, that isn't just simple to bring it in straight away. We do need to have that period to work with communities to make sure that everyone recognises the positives that can come out of introducing these sort of orders, because we all recognise the environmental impacts, but we have to make sure we get right and we bring people with us. I mean, that's absolutely crucial that what we're going to be doing for this report. So more than happy to second, Chairman, and really welcome the report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so just echo your comments. It's very helpful that the large number of responses and that the recommendations are reflecting a majority view of the residents. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Upton.
I think the recommendation is correct at this point in time. It gives us some time to reflect and, as you say, consult again and think about it, because we have the urban area of West Bridgford and the rural area of the borough. And this is national government, and I understand it, I get it about public health. It's sort of governments looking at public health, be it tobacco or drinking or whatever. I'm not so sure that one size fits all. And I think it's the right decision this evening to give ourselves a couple of years or whatever to reflect on this and make some comment back to government to try and come up with a compromise. Because, you know, in a very rural area, parts of the borough, then we're talking about air quality here. And I think it will give them time, those people that have got wood burners, to look and quantify what the market is offering in terms of the equipment to burn the wood, and also how that wood is sourced, be it from their own woodland or friends or from the commercial market. And as I read the legislation and the proposals, it's very much restricted on what equipment you can use and what wood you can burn. And I think we need time to reflect. So I'm pleased with our decision or recommendation this evening. It won't go away, but you've got a couple of years, which isn't that long, I know, but at least I think we can consult more and get some more feeling from our residents, particularly those in the rural areas that aren't affected at the moment by smoke control. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with your comments. If there's no other comments or questions, Councillor Brennan, having declared an interest, obviously won't be voting. So it's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please. So that is unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Therefore, I'll declare the meeting closed and wish you a safe journey home. Thank you.